Hi,
Ooh, I
everybody.
just got a notification.
Hey, we're live. Hi. God, you are so impatient.
I know. I'm so excited to talk about this book.
Yes. So, hi, everybody. Welcome to the return of Read Away, which is the sort of book club live stream that Dana and I do from time to time, where we each are reading a book and we read a few chapters at a time before each show, and then we talk about the book.
Talk about it.
Yeah. So, since this book was your choice,
Uh-huh.
so why don't we start by having you tell us what book, first of all, what the book is that you have chosen. I mean, hopefully everybody knows the title because it's in the title of the stream, but tell us about the book and why you picked this book for our show.
So here's the thing. It is not this book.
No, that's one you just got today, right?
I know. I got the next one. So this is a book that I have already read. So we kind of started this out like a spin-off of Trek Reluctantly, because we've been flip-flopping, a book my choice, a book your choice.
Right.
And now you didn't do this, but I chose a book that I had already read and wanted to reread
Right.
with you and then
Right.
talk about it. And so the same thing is true for this one. So I've already read this book and I'm reading it again because it's just that good. And however, I'm sneaking ahead to the next one in the series. So I actually read this when we were in the car on the way back from Disney World. And I flew through this thing. It was so good. And one of the things I really liked about it was that it wasn't super, super difficult. But it was still kind of thinky and philosophical the way that good science fiction is. But it was very, very accessible. Like if you've never read science fiction before, this is a great one to start out on because you can understand everything that you need to, and it's all like, even if you've never read science fiction before. So that was one of the reasons that I really liked it. The characters, well, the main character is really interesting and fun. The side characters are sort of not flat exactly, but like for me, even after having read it once and reading through it the second time, it's Dr. Mensa and then the other scientists. They all kind of blend
And the
together.
rest.
Yeah, but at the same time, that makes sense because of who our perspective character is. And I think that really, really, really works. So really good.
And our
Really good book.
perspective character is
Murderbot. Come on, how can you not love? And so Murderbot is not actually its name, but that's how it thinks of itself. I like that it's not actually a robot; it is a construct, but it seems to think of itself as a robot with organic parts.
Yeah, because they draw a distinction in the book because they're one of the sort of human characters is referred to as an augmented human.
Right.
So there's so we have sort of a distinction between just normal ordinary humans and then augmented humans and then
Right.
murder bots, which are apparently part human part robot, but like you said,
Right.
they're like they're constructed, it seems.
Right.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there seems to be also a distinction between constructs and robots. Like the main character Murderbot often talks about the I don't want to say like some of its reactions that it doesn't quite understand. It has like it gets gut feelings. It has experience, in its job as a security construct, and sometimes we saw that I think in chapter 3 that it's like I don't think this is a good idea, and I can't exactly pinpoint why. And it talks about it's got software that is supposed to override some of the impulses that come apparently from its organic parts, it says. But it's really 255 AD. I'm going to say no. I noticed this, Steve. You were talking about Murderbot using they them when we were first talking about it in chapter 1, but I'm going to use it in its. because
Does the book use it its? I didn't notice the book using
yes,
any particular pronoun, so I just sort of defaulted to they, but does the book actually use it its? Because I
I
honestly didn't
don't.
notice.
Yeah, well, more that it prefers to. It feels more comfortable when Donna. It feels more comfortable when humans refer to it as a. When humans think of it as a robot, like it thinks of itself as an object, like definitely not a person. In the first, I think even in the first chapter, we see that um, it rides with the cargo, not with the crew, and that's what it's used to. And it's established that, I mean, there's an emergency and it has to, bring one of the crew members who's injured into the crew area, and it asks for permission because it's not supposed to be out there with the crew because it's, an
Right.
object. And so that's one of the things that I find most intriguing about this. It's one of the reasons that I like books so much, is because it encourages us to think. And I think 255 AD, this is one of the things that I saved. This is your question from earlier. Blup, blup, blup. Where did it go? Yeah, about self-determination and essentially and what it means to be an independent being, essentially. This is not just that this security construct is not interchangeable with other security constructs. Not just because of one of the things we learned early on is Murderbot has hacked its governor module. And that's the module that's supposed to override, it's supposed to keep it functioning like an android or like a droid.
Like an
Or,
automaton.
yes, that it's supposed to function as any other security construct of that model. So the fact that it refers to itself as murder bot, I think, is telling. Like, it's thinking of itself. I do think it thinks of itself as a robot that has some organic pieces in it. Like, it identifies as an object. But at the same time, the fact that it identifies that way indicates that it's not just stuff, because it has an identity. And so, I mean, I think that's something, especially now when we're, thinking about, things like gender, and then especially in conversations about, abortion, what makes this group, this cluster of cells, or this cluster of molecules even, not just human. Like you talk about, this isn't just a skeleton, it's a human skeleton. Well, yeah, but it's not a person anymore. The difference between a human and a person, and the fact that you don't have to be human to be a person. And that's especially true in science fiction, but it also applies in some of our conversations in, in terms of our society, like how we count someone as a person. And so that's one of the things I really, really was interested in.
Yeah. So why don't we start talking about the book, the actual story? Because
okay,
we're
you
going
mean
to
the
cover
plot?
Yes, we're going to
I
cover.
was talking about the story. I was talking about the characters.
Yes, correct. My apologies for not being as precise as perhaps I should have.
All right. Well, go ahead, Steve. And I'll interrupt you.
We read chapters 1, 2, and 3 for this first segment, and I really, really like the first sentence. I want to read the first sentence of the book because I think it's a very strong opening sentence. So here it is. I could have become a mass murderer after I hacked my governor module, but then I realized I could access the combined feed of entertainment channels carried on the company satellites. So right there, we have it's a good open. It's my idea of a really strong opening sentence for a book, right? Because it gets our attention. Your opening sentence is your first opportunity to drop a hook, and it gets your attention right away by saying, I could have gone on a murdering spree. And you're like, oh, hello. Like, what's this about? And then it tells us a couple of other things, that the reason that Murderbot didn't go on a killing spree, apparently, is because it realized there was all this TV to watch. So it decided to do that instead. And it also mentions the company, which introduces sort of the broad kind of context that we're in. You know, this is an entity that is part of a company, that is perhaps a creation of a company or a subject of a company. So we're dealing with, you know, like what presumably like a private corporation, which as turns out to be the case as we get further into the book. But it's just a really, really good opening sentence. And I know you did a video about great opening
Yes,
sentences. So
which
what?
was it? I don't know. Maybe it wasn't before these books came out. Because I mean, there's like a bunch of them out. Let's see. When did this one come out? Yeah. Yeah, this one, the second one's 2018. So yeah, I think well,
So
of
your
course,
video was after, yeah.
yeah.
But anyway, well, so
But not that much.
so in your opinion, as someone, you know, since you,
This is a pretty strong one.
is this a good strong? Is this a good opening sentence in your opinion?
Yes, it is. I think my favorite is still 1984.
Oh, the clock striking 13. Yeah.
Yeah, and not just because of the clock striking 13, but also the construction of the sentence, the way that it starts out. I mean, not just, I mean, it moves from the ordinary to the surreal, but it actually starts out fairly mundane. I mean, is about as vague as you can start off with, and it adds more detail that becomes clearer through the sentence. So it was a bright, cold day in April. So, you know, we start getting some details, and then we get some more specific details in April. And then we move to, and all the clocks were striking. So that's, you don't get even your action verb until the second half of the sentence. And all the clocks were striking 13. And then you have that one word at the end, which is like shoves it into like, wait, what?
Like
it's just like
gives you a sense of
it's
unreality.
A record scratch.
Like things are different. Yeah, things are different here. So what is it about the opening sentence of this book?
This one, not so much with the construct, not so much with the sentence structure, but because this one starts off with the smacking across the face, I could have become a mass murderer, like right away. And then so it does the reverse, and it does it by pulling us into the familiar, because we're all like, binge watching is a thing. So this is it's written in the post Netflix paradigm.
Oh, yeah.
You're like, binge watching. Yes, we all get this. And so you immediately, because it's also in first person, and that's not the case with 1984, it allows us to immediately connect with Murderbot. And that's important because Murderbot is not a person. And we don't get that from that first sentence.
That's true. It sounds like just another human being talking, and then we learn as we read through the chapter, like, oh, there are things about this character that are very different,
clearly,
from us.
Yes.
Yeah. And then we also learn after that.
Okay, my tea is no longer burning my mouth. Yay!
Yay! And we also learn after that. Oh, thank you for the super chat there, Tab Extra. Oh, I love Murderbot. I have books 1 through 6 in Audible. Well, there you go.
I'm like, this is, oh gosh, how can you not just?
So Murderbot, we learn. Go ahead.
Okay, Philip also built, not born, I think is, I wouldn't say that born is as much the issue as the concept of growth. Like Murderbot hasn't grown. It was because it was constructed, it emerges with its consciousness programmed into it as fully formed. There's no period of development in the same way that fully organic beings or even augmented beings have. Even non-sentient, non-sapient beings have. So I think that's also part of it as well.
So in this first chapter, that's another thing I really like about the book so
Mm.
far.
Hot.
Um, not a lot of exposition, not a lot of okay, so here's what's happening. Right,
Yeah.
we pick things up as the story goes along. Murderbot tells us little
Yes.
details about things as the story goes along. There's
Just
not
here
like
and there. Yeah. And
yeah,
and
yeah,
there's like a little bit
and a
more
picture
detail than you.
a picture is allowed to form, like in our
Yes.
minds as we go on.
And Murderbot does do some exposition, but it's like little pieces here and there that allow you to make inferences about the rest of the world. And not just like in terms of the planet they're on, but like the story world,
The
the story
larger world.
universe, really.
Yeah, yeah. Well, because
Where is that button?
we pick them up. Murderbot has been assigned as a security unit to an expedition to a planet. It's like a group of scientists that have been sent to survey a planet by a private company, um, and they are in the midst of just kind of exploring an area outside of their habitat on this planet when some things go awry, shall we say. We have our
Oh,
first our first big action sequence where
dun dun dun.
they're working around a big crater, and all of a sudden this creature just bursts out from the ground underneath the crater, almost eats one of the scientists, and Murderbot has to uh, grab her and carry her to safety and sort of hold her wound so she doesn't bleed out, and um, while they all make a run for it and run back to the habitat. So it's a very exciting beginning, and allows us to sort of see Murderbot in action, but also see what we are sort of meant to infer makes Murderbot a little different than other
Yes.
Murderbots. What makes this Murderbot different from other Murderbots, right?
Okay. And so some of it also doesn't come right away. Like one of the things that clearly the crew, the humans were not expecting was that there are two scientists who are right where the whatever creature or animal this is that comes
Mm.
out, some sort of giant worm, explodes out of the ground below them, grabs one in its giant toothy maw, and the other one just like and the crew, the alert sent to Murderbot said, get the one that's injured and get that one back to the hopper, and assumed that the uninjured one would go back to the hopper. But the
Right.
uninjured one is in shock. And Murderbot notices this and takes that scientist by the elbow and says, we need to
We
get
have
out
to
of here.
go.
Let's go.
Yeah.
And Murderbot gets him back. And it's not until later when everybody else is just like, what the heck? And Murderbot reviews the video feed and notices that it's talking to the scientist who is able to walk but is having trouble, and apparently is asking him about his kids, and responding to him and compassionately and encouraging in a way that this is a security bot, not a therapy bot,
Right.
that is not expected. And so 255 AD, that ties into your question about what humans believe about constructs' capabilities. Humans do act like they have reduced capacity, and Murderbot mentions this by saying that the educational modules that it gets as a Murderbot are crap. But it's because it's specialized to a further extent than humans are. Like, we go through K through 12 education, and in many cases, the first 2 years of university are your liberal arts classes, where you're supposed to take a bunch of stuff to sort of learn about a variety of, theories and mindsets and different fields to sort of give you a liberal education so that you're not just specialized in one thing. And so with constructs, it's like you're programmed to be good at this, and you have a couple other like supplementary skill sets that are designed to help you in that function. But it's like, it's unreasonable to expect your toaster to boil an egg. Like
Right.
they both cook food, right? But like that's not what the toaster is made for. You know, it doesn't mean you're thinking less of the toaster because you don't expect it to boil an egg. It's just that's not what
Right.
it's made for.
And I mean, with Murderbot, we're told, I think in the first chapter, because Murderbot has I suppose like a human face or a human head or
Yes.
mostly human head, and but always when it's on duty, it wears a helmet with a faceplate, so you can't see the face. And apparently, most Murderbots just leave the helmet on all the time, and so and this Murderbot only takes the faceplate off in order to talk to the injured member of the party and comfort him, um, and so the other
And
members
then
of
also,
the expedition don't, they're not used to seeing like a murder bot with a face, so it seems like that kind of thing
right.
is unusual, so they would other
Or a
people you would
construct with a face in general.
yeah, so you would imagine like in other expeditions and in other missions where a construct like this is assigned, the humans probably would just assume that it was some kind of, just an android or something, because they wouldn't even have a face to
Or not even
sort
an
of
you know,
imprint
like the
on.
difference between, Android we think of as, human appearing, but like in Star Wars, a lot of the droids do not have the,
They're
two
not
arms.
humanoid in form, yeah,
Like
yeah. Like
R2D2 is still a
R2D2 is
droid.
not an android, yeah, yeah,
Yes. Um, so and so 3 chapters in, we're not, it's unclear if other constructs are self-aware or if it's something that has developed since Murderbot hacked its governor.
right,
It hasn't deactivated it completely because it seems to still get the commands and things like that where the governor is trying to say, hey, 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 like it can notice it, but it has the capability now, it has the opportunity and the ability to decide whether it wants to follow those guidelines or not. It makes its own decisions. So it's no longer controlled by the governor. And then after the action sequence, it goes back to its quarters to its little spot to regenerate some of its organic parts that have been
yeah,
eaten, and but before it can put away all of its little the mechanical parts that need to be repaired and put them into the repair slots, it collapses. And so that's why actually when the crew or Mensa specifically wants to review some of what happened and say, can you explain some of this? It comes down and it looks like it's not wearing the armor at all. And I think one of the people says, who's this? Like it's another
yeah.
person. It looks like a person without the armor, and they're just not ready for that at
No,
all.
it's not. Yeah, well, and I think when Mensa goes to Murderbot's quarters to visit,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of sort of shock about just how seriously injured it would be if it were just a normal human, because there's a
Right.
lot of like because it's taken off its armor, there's a lot of blood all over the place, there's a lot of the organic parts have been damaged or are just gone after the you know attack from the creature. So when Mensa pays it a visit, there's a moment of like, oh shit, like, are you okay? But it's just, humans aren't used to this. I'm fine. I just need to regenerate. The organic stuff will grow back. It looks awful if
It
you're a
looks bad.
human.
It
Yeah,
looks worse than it is.
yeah,
I was saying something similar to somebody at the Y yesterday. I don't remember. The days are all kind of, fusing together. Um, the two of the classes that I like taking are bar and body pump. And I said, in fact, I think I said it to the body pump instructor. No, the body pump instructor yesterday. I said, I really like having body pump after bar because body pump is a weights class and you can use less weights. With bar, like you use 2 or 3 pound weights. Everything else is just body weight. And your body is what you got. You can't like make it less. I mean, there are ways like you can like instead of full extension, you can pull your arms in and do lifts like this instead of like out like this. And we're just doing the first 3 chapters, not available. There are spoilers for those 3 chapters. So if you want it unspoiled, come back after you've read the first 3, but we're not talking about the whole book, just FYI. And so I said, I was making a parallel, and now I said a thing, and
But you got distracted by the chat, like you always do.
I did. Well, the hi people, and
Dana, focus on what you were saying.
Focus. What was I? What was?
You were going to make some kind of comparison between your.
It's worse than it's not as bad.
It's worse than it looks, or it's not as bad as it looks. Yes,
it's not as bad as it looks. And so I said to the body, I said, I'm so glad that this is, because I can just deload here. I can't do that. Body pump is so much easier than it looks. I mean, you look into the room, because that Y has like glass walls into the room, and you see like a whole bunch of people, and they got, full bars, and there's weight plates stacked on them, and they're like, overhead and deadlifts and stuff. And it's just,
and you're thinking,
like, and then you look over at the bar class.
Yeah.
People are like, tap, 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 tap. That's all they're doing for like 30 seconds of that. And they go, oh God. And you're like, what's going on? All they did is like wiggle their arms. Look, that may have been 30 seconds, but let me tell you, that is really hard. So yeah, that was what I was just like, he's like, oh, this actually isn't a big, it looks bad, but it's really not that big a deal. And Vince is like, okay then.
Okay, sure. So yeah, but then Murderbot.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes. I got that. I don't know. I feel like I'm kind of a performative, like I perform extroversion. This is how I'm able to be a teacher. But let me tell you, my space. This is my space. It's nice. I was
getting to that. There's the scene where Murderbot goes into the crew area.
Yes.
At Mensa's, order or invitation or whatever, to sort of review what happened. And Murderbot lets us know through its narration, and also it's obvious just through the interactions or lack thereof with the other crew members, that Murderbot is not really
awkward.
Yeah, Murderbot doesn't really want to hang out with the rest of the group. And Murderbot has noticed.
It doesn't have that programming.
Well, Murderbot has noticed, because they've been doing this for a couple of days or something when the story starts. So like Murderbot has been observing these people and has noticed that they seem like a pretty nice group. They get along well with each other. They seem like they're friends, and they're relatively nice to Murderbot compared to other assignments that it's had, right? So they're a nice group of people. But Murderbot doesn't want to hang out with them. Murderbot would rather, if it doesn't have duties to perform, it would rather just go back to its room and watch TV, right? And it mentions a couple of times, like how bored it is, and how much it just wants to, go back to watching the serial that it's been watching, and that's so there's a moment. Is it in the first chapter or the second chapter where Dr. Mensa?
I think it's the second.
Where Dr. Mensa says to Murderbot, you can stay out here with us if you want. And Murderbot forgets that the faceplate is up and everybody can see its face.
No. It's not. Murderbot has not forgotten, because Murderbot ain't got no armor at that point.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
More than Murderbot says,
the face is visible.
Used to having the faceplate up. And it's not good at controlling its expressions.
Yeah, the face is visible is the point, and it's obvious. Apparently, it's obvious from the expression on Murderbot's face that that's the last thing Murderbot wants, is to hang out.
And
with the rest
Mensa's
of the
like,
group.
or not. That's okay.
Yeah, exactly. Mensa's like, yeah, or whatever. Do what you want. And
it's all good. It's all good.
And then Murderbot says, because everything, Murderbot has access to all the video feeds and stuff, and there's like security cameras in the crew area, so it can tap into the recordings of everything that and basically listen to conversations that people have had after the fact, and it listens to the rest of the crew talking about it after it leaves. And trying to decide, like, what they should do about Murderbot, if they should make an effort to be nice and try to talk to it more, be more friendly. Yeah. And I think
it's to talk about its feelings. Yes, that would be great.
And I think Mensa and Mensa is like, let's not do that. Like, Mensa kind of saves Murderbot from more unwanted interaction by like, no.
Pain.
Yeah, like
pains to even
let's not do
say.
that. So yeah, this is all going on, so we're getting a sense of who Murderbot is, and how it interacts with the rest of the crew. And there's also, as we see the story develop in these first three chapters, there's a little bit of a mystery beginning to unfold, because that creature that attacked them was a surprise. They didn't expect to find anything like that. And when they check when
Their
Murderbot and the other,
reports, logs.
they check their logs, and they check like the maps that they've been given of the area where they are. They notice that there's certain information that they should have that they don't have. There's missing data, there's missing maps, um, and they can't account for that. And at first, people are just, I think some of the people in the group are like, well, it's probably just damaged because the company is cheap and they just gave us bad information because they're, cheap and incompetent, and, it is what it is. But there's sort of the possibility that there's something else going on here, that there is something on this planet that the company or somebody knows about that they're not supposed to know about. And there's another group working for another company that is surveying the same planet, but they're just on the opposite side of the planet. And the two groups can sort of talk to each other over the radio, and sort of compare notes. But then there comes a point where this group that we're following tries to contact the other group, and they get no answer.
Yeah, because they want to
Yeah.
ask them. I think the other group said that they would send over their maps,
Right.
and they were going to get the missing data from them.
Right. Or see if they were missing the same data, because they go through the information that they have, and they notice a couple of different places
Right, but
where it
the
seems like
vibe
there's
that
information missing.
right, but the what it sounded like they said, well, we have this information, we're going to send it over to you.
Okay, yeah. And then nobody picks up the phone.
Right.
And it's,
Hey, Radical Bacon.
Hey, Radical Bacon.
Tab Extra, I don't know what Asshole Research Transport is, so I don't know if we'll see more of it.
Yeah, I apparently Philip says that that's from the second book. So
yes, and
yeah.
we're Tab Extra, we're only doing the first 3 chapters of the first book.
Of the first book. And yeah.
Right.
And that's all I've read. Dana has read the first book completely, and we're just going back over it. And I haven't read it at all. I have just read the first 3 chapters that we're talking about for the show. So if ART appears later on,
I was sort of waiting to see more from the chat and see if I could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But thank you for the super chat.
Yeah.
But
and I will, if you want to, like, I just grab one of my videos. I don't care which it is. If you want to leave me a comment there, Steve probably won't read it. And
if you want to spoil it,
you want? Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm about to. I just picked up the second book today.
You're going to start the second book. Yeah.
Yeah. So I will 100% talk to you about that. Just, I'll just leave Steve in the dark. So.
But yeah, so at the end of, so that kind of covers chapter 2, and then in chapter 3 they are trying to figure out what they should do next, because they know that they have missing information in their packets. They know that the other expedition on the other side of the planet might have some more information, or could shed some light on their predicament, but now all of a sudden they've gone radio silent on a planet where they know there are at least some incredibly dangerous creatures that can tunnel through the earth and burst out of the ground. So they're a little worried, like that maybe it's not, some technical problem, like maybe they're all dead.
Or maybe it is some technical problem and they're all dead.
Maybe it's a technical problem and they're all dead. Exactly. So they decide, so they have these 2 vehicles. There's the little hopper, which is for short range transportation, like in the immediate vicinity of their habitat. And then there's the big hopper, which we're led to believe is really only there for when they arrive and leave, but they can also use that to travel long distances. So their plan is to get some of them into the big hopper and travel to the other encampment on the other side of the planet and just pay them a visit and see how things are and see what the situation is.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some debate over whether Murderbot should come along because
Right,
Dr. Men,
because you know
yeah,
they're both dangerous. They're both in danger. You got your injured
right,
folks here, and what if the hostile that comes that big worm shows up and tries to eat the habitat?
right.
They need Murderbot,
Because
but
because not only is it the habit, I mean, they have injured people that are going to stay behind.
yeah,
So
no,
yeah,
that's what I said. The injured folks are staying back. They ain't
yeah.
going on the mission. They're going to stay back at the habitat.
Right. So yeah,
So they need Murderbot, but so does the group that's on the away mission.
Well, and Murderbot kind of nudges them in that direction because Dr. Mensa,
because it notices it picks up on Mensa sort of vibing that it wants that she wants Murderbot to stay,
right,
which again shows that it has more social ability than it gives itself credit for. Like it picks up on Mensa's stuff, you know, Mensa's inclination, even though Mensa hasn't said, Murderbot, you're going to stay here, you know?
right, because Murderbot is thinking you should definitely take me along.
Yes.
Like, you should definitely take me along. The other outpost all of a sudden stops answering the radio, like, for no apparent reason. We just got attacked by a monster that burst out of the ground. You should take me along.
Yeah.
And eventually that is the decision. The rest of the group kind of agrees and says, yeah, the Murderbot should go on the trip. That's a good idea. Oh yeah, and Donna, that's a good point in the chat that the autopilot on the hopper has been on the blink. So, you know.
Donna, you said something earlier that I meant to respond to and I didn't. You talked about it didn't download the update. Murderbot did download the update but didn't install it.
Right. Apparently, because apparently since it hacked its governor, that's what it's been doing. I guess it with the governor in operation, it would just automatically install
automatically. And that was another thing that made me identify with. I'm so bad about that. Like I hate the automatic updates because like I'll go to my phone and it's like, do you want to do this update now? I'm like, no, I want to use my phone now. I don't want to do an update now. Can I just do it later? And it's like, okay, just make sure it's plugged in at the time that you say you want to do it. I'm like, okay, that'll be fine.
And you don't ever plug your phone in.
I do overnight, but then I don't know why it doesn't figure it out. And then like I go to use my phone again. It's like, do you want to do this update? I'm just like, no, I want to use my phone now. That's why I picked it up. So I don't know, because like I don't know if I have to. No, I think it's not so much the phone as the computer because I don't close everything out. I am really bad with like having a bazillion tabs open, and I'm like, I don't want to lose my place. And I have like things like I have a journal website where I'm like, okay, this is my daily list, and but like if I close it, it's kind of a pain to find it. And then I'll have like stuff that I'm looking at on Twitter, and I'm like, I want to go back to this. Like I sent this tweet to this group because we're talking about what we're going to be having for the topic for our tweet chat. And I was like, here, this tweet came up, but like I'm a new member of the group, so I didn't want to bring it up until somebody else brought it up. So I kind of held on to that. So like there's reasons for it. Okay. I have reasons for doing things the way that I do.
Do you know what you are? Do you know what you are, Dana?
I'm a murder bot.
No, I don't think so. You're a tab hoarder.
I don't hoard all the tabs, and like I go through.
Hoarders don't hoard. Hoarders don't hoard everything, but they hoard what they hoard.
No, but I mean, I don't hoard all the tabs. Like I go through and I cull. Okay, I curate my tabs. Okay,
of course, I'm sure you do.
So anyway, the point of all of that was that I really connected with Murderbot on that, because he's like, it's like I'll get to it when I get to it. Okay, deal. I got things I
Well,
need to do.
and not only that, and it's not just I'll get to it when I get to it, but Murderbot looks at the contents of the update package and only applies the updates that it wants.
Yes, when
So
it
yeah,
gets to it. When
yeah.
it gets a chance, it's like, okay, I want this one and I want this one. That can just, screw off. The 255 AD, yes, that is just rude. And I'm like, can I stop this? Nope. You don't really own your stuff anymore. The company owns it. And it allows you the privilege of having some access to it.
Oh, and by the way,
I understand very much how Murderbot feels, okay?
and also, I mean, I don't think we've said this outright, but it is an important part of the scenario so far. Not only has Murderbot hacked its governor, but nobody else knows about that. And
oh yeah,
and
and
apparently
Murderbot is concerned if anybody knows.
It would be bad news for Murderbot because you're not supposed to do that, and so that and
It's
actually
not supposed to be able to do
it's not
that.
supposed to be able to do that. And actually, in the first chapter, there's even a bit where when it's bringing the wounded member of the group into the habitat, it actually stops and asks for permission to come in because if its governor was operating properly, it would have had to do that. Now, it
Right.
didn't actually have to do that because it didn't have the governor had been turned off. So it could have just walked right in if it had wanted to, but it didn't want to tip
It didn't
anybody
want the
off.
crew to know
Yeah.
that it had hacked the governor.
Yeah. So that's sort of, so it's one of the things I've liked about the first 3 chapters so far is that without feeling too busy or too cluttered, there is a lot of stuff going on at the same time. But it keeps it clear enough and we sort of just touch on things here and there to remind us that, oh, this is a thing, you know. But it feels like there's different levels of things happening, which I think is working really well so far. You know, the idea that there's a mystery on the planet as to what's happening and to what fate has befallen the other group on the other side. There's, you know, Murderbot hacking the governor and also like some tension arising from that. There's the interpersonal dynamics. There's a
Yes.
lot of stuff happening all at once, but it all sort of gels together very
Fits.
nicely so far.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
I liked that a lot.
So
and
then,
okay, so
yeah,
one of the
go
other
ahead.
things that I told you that I wanted to say on here,
Yes.
Since I'm reading this for the second time and I know like sort of what the conclusion, like why all of this is happening, it's interesting because I notice things that have, and I understand the significance of some of the details that have significance at the time, but also have a broader significance in the context of the plot for the book. Like I know when something happens, I'm like, oh, that's because of this thing that we
Right.
haven't found out yet. I'm just
You
like,
know
I
what that-
know,
you-
I
yeah,
know
you
this.
know what's behind it. Yeah.
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 And I mean, I also know, because we were talking about this, about they're heading over to, what is it, Deltsec? Anyway, they're heading over to the other
something.
camp.
I don't know. Yeah.
Deltfall, thank you.
Yeah.
You're so much better at remembering things. Except I remember what they're going to find. Get there.
And I don't remember that because I don't know. Because I haven't
don't know
read
yet.
that.
I know.
Do
I haven't spoiled it.
Do they find do they find an alien that can shapeshift and look like other living things? And
might.
I'm just asking if it's because you know there are 2
Named John Jones?
No, not at all. I'm thinking The Thing. But as I was going to say, the thing from The Thing.
Is it a movie or what thing?
The Thing, the movie, The Thing, the thing from
what thing are you talking about? Can you be more specific?
The Thing by John Carpenter, The Thing starring Kurt Russell, The Thing.
What thing?
The Thing. Third base. No,
I don't even know what I'm talking about.
You mentioned when you asked me if we could do this and if I was interested in reading this with you, one of the things you said was that it's like it's like a Star Trek episode where they're on an away mission, and I definitely get that vibe from it. Um,
Mhm.
but it also there are two major sci-fi sort of references, not even direct references, but just it evokes um, two other sci-fi classics. Um, there's first of all there's Alien, and then there's The Thing,
With
and
something exploding out of the surface.
yeah, and also like the astronauts are private contractors. One of the things that made Alien, that sort of allowed Alien to set itself apart from, for instance, Star Trek or Star Wars, was that the space explorers in Alien aren't, freedom fighters rebelling against a galactic empire, or explorers who are part of like an exploration corps, out to chart the galaxy and meet new aliens like in Star Trek. They were a commercial group, like they were doing a for-profit enterprise, and and that allowed the movie to have a little bit of social commentary about that sort of thing, but also it made the characters feel a little bit more cut off than they would be, because there's the suggestion that because it's a private company and because it's mostly concerned with making money, that it's a little ruthless, and if push came to shove, they might just be on their own, you know.
Yeah.
Um, which in Star Trek, you never really get that. You figure, well, Starfleet will get there eventually. Like if the Enterprise is in trouble, I mean, it's always a scenario where the nearest ship is 3 weeks away or whatever, But there's help theoretically that could come, and that would come if possible, because it's a benevolent organization. But with Alien, or perhaps with this, you don't have that guarantee, because it's presented as kind of a capitalist thing. And it's like, well, maybe they'll come help us, but then again, maybe they'll decide we're not worth it, you know? Um,
Hmm.
so I think that makes it interesting too. And yeah, and just the idea of going to the other place and not knowing what you're going to find there, and potentially finding something disastrous that you could bring back to your place. Like that's, it's very much like The Thing. So yeah. And Stewart in the chat with a dash of RoboCop. Yes, yes. Murderbot has some RoboCop-ish qualities as well, for sure. And RoboCop also has some satire about private industry and the perils of privatization and over commercialization as well. So yeah, there you go. Oh, and the
All
idea
right. I'm gonna
of what?
go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. Um, it reminded me. Well, the question I had, and that I still have, and that I imagine will be explored somewhat throughout the rest of the book, is um, how and why did Murderbot hack its governor module? You know, because it's presented as an unusual thing. And is this something that murder bots just do from time to time if they reach a certain level of sentience or sophistication? Or is this something that has never been done before? And if so, what was it about this murder bot that made it special and made it able to do that? And funnily enough, because we started reading this week, um, the most recent episode of The Orville dealt with a broadly sort of similar situation, because one of the characters on the Orville is Isaac, and Isaac is an android from a race of killer androids. and, and Isaac is not a killer android. Isaac is a good guy, but his people are extremely hostile to all biological forms of life. And Isaac, he's I mean, if you're comparing it to Star Trek, which is easy to do with the Orville because it's a Star Trek pastiche. Um, Isaac is the Data character, but Data, just looks like a human with a little bit of a different skin tone. Isaac looks like a robot. Like Isaac is made out of metal and doesn't have has 2 arms, 2 legs, and a head, but doesn't have a face. Just has a smooth face plate with just lights for eyes, and looks very unhuman. Isaac is a robot, right? Doesn't have emotions, you know, and reacts to everything very clinically and very logically and very systematically. Um, and in the most recent episode, we get a little bit of backstory about where Isaac's race of robots came from and why they are so hostile to biological beings. And it's because they were created however long ago, however many thousands of years ago, to be servants by this race of beings. And the people who owned these servant robots eventually began mistreating them because why not? They don't have feelings. They're just robots. They're here to service us, to do our bidding. So why not be mean to them? But as they continued to operate, they started to develop their own personalities and they started to develop artificial intelligence. And they started asking questions like, why are we servants? Why do we have to do everything? Like, why don't any of you ever help with the work?
Mm-hmm.
What is the reason for our servitude? And there was no good explanation because
Yeah.
once they reach the point where they are people with their own thoughts and not just
Once they start asking
automatons,
why.
yeah, then there is no justification because now you're dealing with a person, an individual that should
Yes.
have rights. Um, and so the question became, like, not is this sort of like an emergent property? Like, would any construct like this, if allowed to operate for a certain amount of time, would it inevitably learn enough and have enough experience that it would reach this point where it would become,
Well,
self-aware?
keep in mind that Murderbot has been keeping this a secret.
That's true, yes. So
And so it's
perhaps there
also
are,
entirely possible that
yeah,
there are others and Murderbot just doesn't know about them.
or that you know, Murderbot assumes that there is a reason to keep it secret because maybe this sort of thing has happened before, and the Murderbots who have done something similar to what this Murderbot has done have not wound up in a very good place, you know?
There hasn't, I mean, we haven't seen any indication of that. And Murderbot is also able to notice things like heart rate, breathing patterns, core and skin temperature, and things like that. And that's how it realized that Dr. Mensa, was thinking about that. That's how it. Those are the inputs that helped it to that supported its conclusion that Dr. Mensa was going to ask it to stay. But I mean, it uses those sorts of inputs to gauge humans' reactions in other ways, just like we read body language. We're actually responding to certain cues. We're making judgments about what's going on with somebody based on their body language, the way they stand, the way they hold themselves, their tone of voice, all of those things. Murderbot's doing the same sort of thing with slightly different inputs. Blah, blah, blah. I also wanted to touch on something. Who said it? That Philip said. Philip, you said that Murderbot is complacent. I don't agree. You say it writes off the Eris as the company being cheap because it just tries to do the bare minimum. I think Murderbot also I think that's also tied into the fact that why it keeps its abilities or why it keeps the hacked governor module secret. It doesn't trust the company, and it doesn't have a very positive opinion of the company based on how it has interacted with the company previously. It doesn't, but at the same time, like, it doesn't assume intentional malice. Like, Murderbot is the one who's, when the humans start wondering about sabotage, Murderbot's like, yeah, it's probably just, essentially, never assume malice when ignorance
Yeah.
will give you an explanation. 255 AD, as far as, I wouldn't say it propagandizes people not to humanize the constructs.
Well, but I mean, you might you might reasonably assume that that might happen, you know, because
It
it
depends
seems
on
like,
what you would count as propaganda. Like the fact that the constructs are listed as part of stuff that you pay for, you know, they're listed on your inventory. Is that propaganda?
well, but I mean, maybe there's there's some kind of effort to encourage to discourage people from viewing them as fully human or equivalent to human in worth, you know, um, because it seems like the company doesn't want them to be seen that way and doesn't want them to be integrated into the group in that way. Like the company wants them to be machines and, fulfill a prescribed role and
But
follow their
is that
programming.
is that does that count as propaganda? I don't know that it's the company wants them to be seen that way, or is it the company? This is how they are typically seen,
The
and the
company sees
company
them
is
that way.
just this is just how the company sees them. It's not like trying to manipulate. Like propaganda is manipulative. Are they deliberately manipulating their clients, or do they like know that they're really people and that they're trying to keep it a secret or something? That doesn't come across to me so far, that the company knows that they're people and is trying to keep that a secret so that they can have essentially slaves. um
Yeah.
I would say it seems more likely that this is a widespread mindset. And that's one of the things, like in Star Wars, you have droids like C3PO and R2D2 are theoretically supposed to be the exception. Droids with personalities are supposed to be like, I mean, I put a case on my phone that has Maleficent on it, but it's just a phone.
It's just a
I
phone.
don't
Yeah.
think of this phone as having a different personality than my previous phone.
Right.
Have
It's
I
a
been
device.
propagandized? I
It's
don't
a
really think so.
device.
It's a device.
Yeah.
It does this thing.
And
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 so,
theoretically
but in
droids in
Star
Star Wars
Wars,
are supposed to be too. Yeah.
right, exactly. That is what we are repeatedly told, that people think of droids as objects. And yet most of the characters don't respond that way. One of the things I really like is that we see these characters going, it it got a face. What?
Yeah.
Like they
They
start to
yeah.
think of Murderbot as a person, and we see that change going on. And we also see, through Murderbot's narration, that this is anomalous, and that this isn't how constructs are typically treated, and that's part of why it feels like it has to keep this a secret. The fact that it doesn't have its governor module, it has been hacked, because that's not the way humans typically interact with constructs. So
There's something so interesting about when stories incorporate characters that either don't have emotions or suppress their emotions. I mean, it's really no mystery why Star Trek goes back to that type so often, you know. And with I mean with droids in Star Wars, it's a little different because the droids behave as though they do have emotions. Like C3PO clearly has emotions,
yes,
um, but like with Data, at least during the TV series, Data gets emotions later on in the movies, but during the TV series, Data doesn't have emotions, and Spock isn't supposed to, or is at least is supposed to suppress them, but they always found all
right.
kinds of excuses
Keep
for
them
him to
controlled.
emote. But and like I was saying with Isaac in the Orville, a very similar character where he lives among extremely emotional people, but he doesn't feel emotions themselves. And it's a way for the storyteller to both create a character that has a lot of pathos because we feel like the character is missing out, and sometimes the character themselves feel like they're missing out because they don't have an emotional experience to their existence like everybody else does.
Mhm.
But it also lets us see something about the other characters, because how do they treat the person without emotions? Do they use that as an allowance for themselves to mistreat them because it's not like they're going to hurt their feelings, or do they treat them with respect and kindness anyway? So it's a very interesting, and it's no wonder that all of those, there are so many android or sort of robot like characters in
And I
fiction that
think
have
I think
become
that's the
memorable
key.
characters.
That's the key, though. Android and robot characters can't typically feel emotions, and so it's really, those are specifically exploring, you know, what existence is like without the influence of emotions. Whereas Spock feels things and just doesn't show what he feels. And so, as somebody who has watched relatively little Star Trek, but teaches Julius Caesar on a regular basis, that's nothing new. That's Brutus.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is this particular, the fact that Brutus is a Stoic, and he practices this diligently to the extent that, the other characters are like amazed by his self-control and the fact that he does not allow his feelings to overwhelm him when he is in a situation which would be emotionally overwhelming, to most people. In Act 4, Cassius finds out that Brutus's wife has died in a terrible way because of the people of Rome turning against her husband and him fleeing into exile. And, she's killed herself. And Cassius and Brutus, who have been close throughout the story, have been arguing. And Cassius says, how did you not like attack me? I've been insulting you and you've been going through all of this. I didn't even know. Yeah. How have you kept your composure? How? And he's like, I know you're a Stoic. It's just, it amazes me that you, even in such a difficult situation, you put your values into practice. And Brutus is like, well, let's not talk about that right now. Exactly. And it's just, so yeah, but it is very Spock-like, minus the ears.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, because I mean,
so yeah, I think it's very much, these sorts of stories are very much an exploration of some of the things that make us people, and to what extent do these elements, to what extent are they necessary? To what extent do they control us? What would we be like if we were free of their influence, or if we couldn't experience them? And
yeah, they've done some really interesting things with Isaac as far as that on the Orville this year. Like, what if all of your decisions basically come down to an equation and there's no empathy, because if you have no emotions, you have no capacity for empathy. What is it that makes you a good person, and what is it that causes you to value other people's lives, or or to act in the service of other people when you don't have to in order to achieve a goal or whatever? Like, if there's no emotional component, where does that come from? And that's a really interesting question. In Star Trek, they always kind of got around it with Data by saying, well, that was part of his programming. When Data was being programmed, he was given a program that doesn't allow him to feel empathy, but he behaves toward other people empathetically. He's programmed to value other people's lives and other people's rights.
Right. Your classic Asimov type stuff.
Yeah.
But also, it invites us to explore, when we talk about like I think I actually did. Doesn't Geordi try to explain anger to Data?
Yes. And Data says,
and I don't know, did we talk about that at all?
I remember us having a conversation on the phone about it. I think it was one of the many times where you boasted that you could have written the scene better.
Yes, because here's the thing, because Geordi keeps trying to define it. I'm like, no, focus on describing the physiological sensations that come along with it. as well as their connection to which I don't think I said at the time, but their connection to rationalization. The physiological symptoms influence our thinking, and they cause us to rationalize, and maybe not cause, but they're connected somehow to our use of logic, and they can impair that so that it's not perfectly logical, but it seems logical to us. So like, when you feel angry, like when you, like, literally physically, the physical feelings, not emotions, but the sensations that you experience are things like increased tension in your muscles, like you can feel your body tightening up. And so tightness in your muscles, especially, ooh, man, those deltoids, woo! Oh, I worked with them today. Whew, boy, oh boy, yeah, I can feel it. And often shallower breathing, so that if you take a breath and let it out, rapid shallow breathing, but just, that sort. So slightly. So if you take a deeper breath and let it out, it pushes back against both of those things. Aching as well, and that probably is connected to the tension in the muscles. An ache in the abdomen, which again might be connected to holding tension in your body. But all of these physical sensations, they are different from what we experience sensationally from things like joy or grief. Like there are reasons that in text we describe grief as a weight. Like there is a pulling down of your lungs and your chest, that it feels like your lungs are being pulled down into your belly when you're grieving. And that's unique to that particular, we connect those not emotional feelings, but those physical sensations with that emotion, because we experience that in situations where that share that commonality. Like that's how we define it. We define it, and it's based when we experience it based on those physical symptoms. And Jordy just didn't do that at all, which is why Data's like, you're just using synonyms. Like you're saying, well, it's when you're really mad. Yes, I know that. You're just giving me a different synonym. Like, come on, Jordy, pay attention.
I have a couple, and I have a couple of comments about that. The first comment is, just because writing it your way would have made Jordy's response to Data more helpful to Data, that doesn't necessarily mean that would be a better scene. But I was giving it some thought as you were talking, and I think if you did it just right, you could have written that in a way that would have made that your a version of your version of that scene would still fit in with that overall episode. Because one of the things that's going on in that episode is Data is experiencing a feeling of anger, and he's not sure at that point where it's coming from or why, but he feels angry, and he kind of likes it because it's the only emotion he's ever felt. So he's kind of fascinated by it, and he's a little concerned. He's like, I hope anger is not the only emotion I'll ever be able to feel. But at the same time, he's feeling an emotion, and he's kind of, interested and fascinated by it. So if Jordy had described it in terms like you're suggesting, that told Data that most of the time, for most people, anger is uncomfortable, then that would have maybe clashed a little bit with what Data was experiencing, where he was viewing it in a more positive light, or at least, in a more exciting light. And Jordy's like, well, actually, most of the time when you're really angry, most of the time it's very unpleasant, for most people. So you would have that kind of conflict with Data, like, well, if I think it is pleasant, what's wrong with me? If everybody else thinks it's unpleasant.
That does take the scene in a different direction, because that scene is used for humor.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And
you
so
lose the
that
joke
beat
at the end.
might not have worked well at that particular place in the episode. And so I do understand that there are reasons, but I think the reason I objected to it was, it's like the fact that Data fairly clearly says, you're giving me synonyms. And then it's like it happens at least twice, maybe 3 times. And I'm like, Jordy ain't that dumb, he's the sort of person who most of the time thinks about what he says before he says it, and he doesn't even acknowledge like the third time, okay, so this is a synonym as well, but going into it, and so it seems like they're willing to fudge on the characterization in order to get the humor across, which again, I understand the choice, but I think I could have done it better. Just saying. I could have made it consistent with the characterization of Geordi and still pulled off the humor. And also, I think you're right. The idea of, but also anger can also be a galvanizing force. It can be empowering. Like that tension is essentially constrained energy. It's power. When you not constrict, when you
Tense a
muscles, they
muscle?
do this, huh?
When you tense a muscle, is
Okay.
that what you're
Yeah, when you tense a muscle, when you contract a muscle,
contracted?
that is force there, and so there's a connection there as well. Being angry can make you stronger, like physically. I mean, not actually stronger than you are, but it can give you more ability to use the strength that you have. So I mean, there's that as well. So I mean, there's a lot of there are opportunities that maybe they just didn't have. They were like, okay, we can't do all of this in one episode, but I think it would have been worth it to say, okay, we can't do all this in one episode, just continue it. But they were, I mean, it was kind of not real flow yet, as far as
Yeah.
I mean, that was
Well,
back in
yeah,
the
and
90s.
Data's, yeah, I mean, Data's emotions in that episode, that was the first part of a two-parter. And after that, that was kind of resolved. I mean, Data's developing emotions. I mean, it wasn't really even explored consistently in the movies. Like, he
Mm-hmm.
gets emotions in the first TNG movie, which is kind of a payoff from something they set up a little bit earlier, a couple years before on the TV show, where he got an emotion chip from his inventor slash father. He just didn't install it yet because he wasn't sure if he was ready. And then in the first movie, he's like, "Yeah, I'm ready. Give me the emotion chip." And so Jordy plugs it into his brain, and there are a couple of jokes where like Data's experiencing emotions for the first time, and it's like, oh, he's still getting used to it, and he's still relishing all the different emotional experiences, um, and it's part of Data's story in that movie, and then by the next movie it's like, oh, he's completely fine. And, if he needs to, he can turn off the emotion chip, if he's in like a stressful situation and he doesn't need to feel anxiety or tension or whatever, he can just turn it off and it's fine. So it's not really, a
Yeah.
consistent part of his character ever. It's just becomes a thing that he can do, you know? So,
So I think we've gone through like all three chapters. We talked
yep.
about the Murderbot mostly, a little bit about Dr. Mensa. Like I said, the other scientists, they kind of merged together.
Yeah,
Um,
there's Murderbot, there's Dr. Mensa, and then there's pretty much everybody else.
yeah, I
Yeah.
don't have a good sense
And
of them, and I think that works well because then you don't have to do the mental effort of carrying everybody, but it works because Murderbot's just like, yeah, I don't care.
yeah.
Y'all are just
Well,
like, you're the humans.
and also, and again, I don't know what's going to happen. I haven't read any more than the first three chapters, but if this does turn out to be the kind of story that it seems like it is, we might not want to get too attached to all of those other characters
I was
anyway.
like, I know where that's going.
I'm just guessing.
Because if they're on an away mission, and this is Star Trek-ish, I mean, one of
This, yeah.
them is the crew member who dies to prove that the situation is serious.
Well, and also,
or
I mean,
more.
So for next time, which will be in
2
2 weeks
from tonight,
I think we should read chapters 4 and 5 because they're longer chapters. So if we read 4 and 5 for next time, then for the final episode, because I think we decided we wanted to do 3 episodes of this.
mm-hmm.
For the last one, we can do 6, 7, and 8 because there are 8 chapters. And just by page count, that gives us roughly the same amount of material to read each time. So next time, for those of you who are reading along with us and want to follow along as we continue to discuss All Systems Red, read chapters 4 and 5. There you go.
And I will say, if you just like get so into the book and you end up reading the whole thing, it's perfectly fine.
Oh, sure, of course, yeah. I mean, As long as you can remember what the hell happens in chapters 4 and 5 for when we talk about that. But yeah, so are we good? Do you have anything else you want to talk about before we wrap up?
Um. Oh,
Yeah.
I have a video.
Oh,
Like
going up tomorrow, right?
now.
Oh no,
No,
your new video
now.
that you shot today, yeah.
Yeah. So earlier this week was Prime Day, and I'm a teacher, and I don't know if you guys saw, but on some social media, the clear the list, adopt the teacher, I think was another hashtag that was trending. And so I had people send me some nice things on from my Amazon wish list, and I got this, and I
Skin tone
got
markers.
this, which is a game, a little narrative game, cooperative. So students would work together in small groups, and that would be one of the cooperative games that they would have the option to play. So I'm pretty excited about that, and did a little thank you video, and it's on my channel. And then yes, there is a video. I kind of feel, I was like, I want to do this video right away, but I've also had this, tomorrow's video is just kind of been waiting on that one. So I was like, but I kind of did like a lot of content this week. Like next Tuesday is Miss Marvel.
Yes.
But Tuesday was my episode 5. And then Wednesday we had Trek
Reluctantly.
And then today we've got this one. And I have another one that I just actually, my mom shot it for me and just on my phone. And put that sucker right in there. And then tomorrow I've got another one, which is you and me again. And,
talking about Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Talking about the Obi-Wan Kenobi show. Da, 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 da,
yeah.
Da, da.
If only it was a variety show hosted by Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan Kenobi. I wish that had been the show.
Sing.
He's a triple threat.
What's the third one? Sing, dance, and act?
Sing, dance, and act. Yeah. He's a triple threat.
What have you seen him dance in?
I don't know. I'm assuming he can dance. I mean,
I don't think he's that good a dancer. I mean, he's marginally competent. We saw him. He and Renee Zellweger dance at the end of Down with Love.
Yeah, which he was very good in. So I feel
he was the acting was better in that one. I mean, he didn't get much of a chance to sing and dance except for that one little number at the end. But he can really he does. I know you didn't like Moulin Rouge, but
I sure didn't. I sure didn't.
Sing. Come what may. Oh, I just.
Yeah. Down with Love was really good, though.
Yes, among my favorites, and I'm so glad you liked it.
We can definitely agree on that. Not on Moulin Rouge, but on Down with Love for sure. Down with Love was terrific. But
he's a man. I hate men.
But yeah, so yeah, that'll be on your channel tomorrow. Our collaboration. We're just talking about the first episode of the Obi-Wan Kenobi show.
That's what it's called. There ain't gonna be any more than these. What was it? Never again.
As Apollo Creed as Apollo Creed said to Rocky at the end of the first Rocky movie, ain't gonna be no rematch. But we're sticking to it. We're not going back on it like Apollo did.
I have exactly zero interest in watching the rest, and I have no need to because my family watched the rest of it without me.
So you don't want to see baby Leia spend like half of the last episode just rooting around through a bunch of wires, because that's pretty much all she does in the last episode. You're like,
she does. Hey, if she can do it without talking, that's an improvement.
Yeah, or it's either the last episode or the second to last episode. But it's like, what are we going to do with Leia for 40 minutes? Oh, let's have her root around through a bunch of wires to try to fix something on the ship. Okay, and that's literally all she does.
Yeah, don't care. I mean, I guess it's not worse. It's not better. But gosh, Carrie Fisher deserved better. So much better.
Well, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I guess that's all I got.
Cool. So yes, and you mentioned it there just a second ago, but just in case, on Tuesday,
next Tuesday,
your review of the final episode of Miss Marvel.
is going to be live streamed.
And I assume like just start kind of, cumulative thoughts on the whole series. And yes, that'll be live streamed on your channel Tuesday starting at 6 p.m. Eastern, right?
6 p.m.
There you go.
Yep. I'm just
Looking
going to go
forward to
because
that.
I was like, well, if I went a little later, it would give me a little bit more time because I've got a class at the Y that I want to do, and it could give me a little bit more time. I'm like, nope, I'm just going to get a quick shower. If I try to soak in the tub, I'm not going to make it even if I make it half an hour later. And then it's just confusing for everybody. I'm like, look, 6 o'clock, 6 p.m. or whatever time 6 p.m. Eastern is for you.
6 p.m. Eastern for us, whatever time it is for you. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so that'll be fun because I for the most part really enjoyed Miss Marvel, although there were some bumpy spots.
I think we agree about that.
Yeah, so I look forward to. I think we've talked about it. I mostly know what you're going to say in general, but I look forward to watching your review. So there you go.
Yeah, because we talked about it Wednesday after Trek. Actually, it was like, okay,
yes,
I didn't want to spoil it for everybody else, but you got to listen to me talk about the show. So everybody else has to wait, but I dumped on you early.
Yeah, I got it before anybody else. So yeah, that's it.
Put up with it before anybody else did.
It is.
I mean, you could have just gone over here and been like, click.
Yeah, I'm not listening to this. Bye. No, I would never do it.
But seriously, folks, bye. And thanks for coming. Don't forget to look in the description because it has a link to charitylinks.page where we have some friends who could use some help, and helping people is always good.
Indeed.
There are also, I think, some other links to if you want like super special deals, you can become a follower. You can become a member of this channel.
Yes.
Or you can also support Steve through patreon.com. Link is also down there.
Huzzah.
I don't have a monetized channel. Sorry, everybody. And it's not my channel anyway, so it's not going to have a link there.
But you have a Patreon, patreon.com/Dana Calderas.
I was going to get to that.
Well, excuse me.
Dancing Ostrich.
Yes, thanks for having us, Chief Dancing Ostrich. Thanks for spending some time with us.
Thanks for sticking around. And so yeah, you can support my work and listen to me cuss. I have an idea for my next swear jar video, which I'm not going to talk about yet, but it does involve, let's say, recent events.
Oh, boy,
which of course leaves the field
narrows
completely
it down.
open, given how this friggin' month of school.
For real.
So, but yeah, actually, I have multiple ideas. I have a lot of thoughts that inspire me.
A lot of things to swear about lately.
Boy, oh boy,
how about
ain't
that?
They just.
So yeah,
I think that's everything, right?
I believe so. So we'll see you next week for the various things. We'll be back. We're on Wednesday. We're back here watching Hilda, and then a week from tonight, I'm back for Ask Away on this channel, and then 2 weeks after that, we're back for the next episode of Read Away. Yeah. So read chapters 4 and 5, and we'll see you next time. Thanks,
Bye, everybody.
Bye.